All right, and I am going to share my screen and we'll get started. So look good on your end, Peter? Can you just see the presentation? Can you see that, Peter or Dorian?
Yeah, we can see it good.
Okay, great. Yes.
Looks
Yeah,
great.
I did a full screen on my end, so yeah.
Sure.
All right. Here we go. All right. All right. Well, here we are. We are at May 25th, 2021, Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign half-day workshop. And I welcome everyone. Since this will be a 5-hour workshop today, there are breaks built in, but we have a lot of information to cover, lots of great student and educators presenting, also some researchers presenting on some of the really cool programs out here that we're going to be talking about, like the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership and the Himalayan Reforestation Project. Really great programs today. But you know, this is going to be recorded and then broken down for people to be able to watch it, because I know a lot of people can't be here for all 5 hours, and we realize that people will be coming in and out of the webinar for those 5 hours. And then also, because we are spanning over basically 15 time zones with this workshop, there's a lot of people coming in at strange times. So but we appreciate that, and we know that trees are super important to you, as is all the observations with the GLOBE program. So today with the workshop, we are going to be highlighting the 2021 International Virtual Science Symposium Student Research Projects from across the globe. And our team went and handpicked a bunch of presentations from IVSS, projects that were coming from all over the GLOBE program, but then had great relevance to our trees campaign, with a combination of looking at tree height, looking at land cover, looking at bringing in other protocols like mosquito habitat mapper and things like that. So there's lots of great things, looking at individual trees all the way to the land cover or a particular area. But what's really great about this is that we really want to focus on how these IVSS projects, are going to be presented by the students, and how the research they've done, basically has applications for the real world. And that's one of the selecting factors of this. They're looking at their local environment and their countries, but they have some type of impact across the globe. So that's what we wanted to focus on, because as you know, with the Trees campaign, we try to focus on that local scale and what that means, for the global picture. So let's get started with some introduction things here, and then we're going to do some metrics, and then a couple things here related to it, and then we will jump into the first session that will be led by one and only Peter Falcon. So let me get started with some really cool introductory slides. Wanted to show you this kind of, getting started this morning. I want you to show you this picture. This is from a citizen scientist I've been in contact with from Nepal. And I want you to take a look at this picture for about a minute. And, what do you see in this picture? And you can go ahead and write your answers in the chat, basically what you see. I asked this of my wife and son yesterday, and they got it partially correct. Okay, what they see in this picture. And if Dorian and Peter, if you see some things in the chat, can you just unmute and let everyone know what you see in the chat, what some of the guesses are,
You bet.
if anyone decides to do that.
All righty.
I'll give you a
Pandemonium is one of the things that we hear.
Yeah.
Or that we see.
So this is a really unique picture, and I show this for a reason. I gave a presentation to, and I don't remember which one it was, who this came from. I believe it was CitSciCon, that was a NASA Citizen Science conference this weekend, well, Friday and Saturday of last week. And we had some folks from all over the world here coming in to look at the NASA science. It was an event sponsored by SciStarter and the Citizen Science Association. But I wanted to show you this because one of the participants sent me this picture after the fact because they mentioned it during after the presentation during the Q&A.
Brian,
Does anybody else?
Another
Yep.
observation we have is a full forest next to a pasture that likely has a lot of erosion.
Ah, that's pretty in-depth. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Got some very acute observations there.
Yep. So let me tell you, I'm going to keep moving here. I'm going to tell you, yes, that's an area there where there's probably lots of erosion. But the one thing I want to let you know is that what you're seeing there is one single tree, which is absolutely mind-blowing. I went and I looked it up, and in Nepal, there are several trees. There's one called the Pakita tree, I believe, that they spread out to a massive amount, in width, massive size and width. But this is one single tree from one humongous, and the citizen scientist said they really are trying to figure out a way to do a tree height observation for this tree in the center. But the difficulty is actually walking to it and actually being far enough away from it that they can get the whole picture within the the phone's camera. But what's crazy, yeah, this is one individual tree, which is absolutely stunning. I just couldn't believe it, but I went and I looked it up to verify it, and talk to the person some more. And these are all around parts of Nepal.
That's
so
incredible.
Pretty unbelievable. And I couldn't figure out, and they're not sure what the exact size of this is, but as you can see, he said I stood pretty far back and still could not get the entire tree within the picture frame. So yeah, and a lot of times they're sitting at precarious spots too. He said this is this environment isn't the greatest. You just walk around, and as you can see, there's private property there, and there's past that fence, so you can't really access it. But yeah, I just wanted to show that picture since we're talking about trees and we are talking about awesome things today. So I just wanted to showcase that with you. So jumping on to today's webinar agenda, and I have it broken down into parts. Right now we're in part one, and I'm doing some welcome and introductions, and I'll talk about the campaign team and then some other things as well. We've did some introductions in the chat already. But then the first section will be the first set of IVS project presentations on trees, and these will come from the Taiwan Partnership and Oman. And then we will have a short break. As you can see, Peter Falcon and I went and changed that time a little bit already. And then after the first break, we will have part two. And that's where we will have a focus on several reforestation projects. And I'll be leading that section. And we will have Brenda Sieglitz here from the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. And then we have Emmanuel De Silva with the Himalayan Reforestation Project and Walk with Janisha. And we have some Q&A after that. And then we have Peter Nelson on our team. He's going to be leading the next group of presentations. And it's going to be IVSS project presentations on trees or land cover. And it's a group he's with over the summer with the SEAS program. And he's going to be showcasing 4 of these projects. And then he's going to be doing a visualization tour of tree height and land cover on the Globe visualization system to showcase what we've seen over the past 3 years. Since this workshop today is kind of a buildup of the last 3 years of the campaign that we've had. And then part 3 is the final part of the webinar today. I should say workshop. I've always used the term webinar, but workshop today. and Dorian will be leading that. And there are going to be presentations from Croatia, Colombia, and the United States. And then we will have a wrap up and discussion. But then at the end of this, our colleague Marina Pavlik and Juan Felipe Restrepo Mesa will be, I think it's primarily Marina, will be talking to us. It's going to be a call for student and teacher translation volunteers because, in the GLOW program, we are in 125 countries where there are many languages spoken. And we try our best to translate the information to as many languages as possible. So Marina Pavlik has been working with a bunch of groups across the GLOW program to get more things translated, all the time in different languages. So she's going to be talking to us about that and some of the work she's been done, and a call out for a potential student and teacher volunteers to become part of the program to help translate some of the materials. So that's our agenda in a nutshell. As you know, we have our core campaign team. I'm the lead. Peter Nelson is the co-lead. Dorian Janney. We have Peter Falcon and Christopher Schumann, who isn't with us all the time right now. He is on our emeritus core campaign team. Other things took him in other places with his research and things like that. So, but he's still part of our team. He is an emeritus, so basically he is a semi-retired part of our team. But we still interact with Christopher all the time about his Trees in the News section and lots of cool things that come out and hot topic things related to trees. So right now we are in the third phase of the year 3 scaffolding structure. Right now we are in the April through June timeframe, and as you know, last month we had a bunch of things related to Earth Day and a lot of the events, the Trees Challenge and the Family Trees, Globe Trees Family Guide. So we covered lots of things last month in the campaign webinar that was focusing on what was happening in April, getting set up for this workshop today. And then, over the next few months, basically, actually June, July, June, we will be covering some more things related to what we've done the last 3 years. But then we have a special guest speaker next month that Peter Nelson has been working with out of Colombia. And then also July and August, we will be having some types of training sessions and trying to get, teachers and students ready for, the next year and taking observations starting the next school year. So, stay tuned for all that. The stats, like I always like to show, and I draw your attention to the bottom here. For full campaign, we are at May 25th today. The campaign started September 15, 2018 with the launch of the ICESat-2 satellite. And you all know why we do that, because ICESat-2 can also measure tree heights with its laser altimeter. But then also, you can see we have a lot of data coming in. We have 35,676 tree height measurements coming in from students and citizen scientists from 15,065 global sites. 18,949 land cover measurements coming from 12,674 global sites, and 20,104 green up, green down measurements, greenings from 636 global sites. And I'm going to say 99.9% of them come from participants of the European Phenology Campaign, because they do such an amazing job. And I see Lenka is on today from the European Phenology Campaign, and they do such an amazing job, working with the students and teachers and other researchers with the European Phenology Campaign to get them out taking the greenings observations for the GLOBE program. So over in the last 3 years, we have 74,729 measurements from 28,375 global locations, and that just happened during the last 3 years. We've had 32 webinars, 8 special webinars. These are ones where we've, presented, co-presented with the European Phenology Campaign. We did presentations for Globe Africa. We did presentations for the Globe, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We did lots of other presentations. We had some live events from different NASA studios, things like that. We have participants in the campaign from 55 countries, and you can see a small map there. And we have 40 blogs as part of the campaign with over 113,000 views. So our campaign is going very strongly. And you can see here this map in the middle here. This is a globe visualization system showcasing, you know, the last 3 years of where all the trees, land cover, greens, and carbon cycle observations have come from. You can see there's a lot of open spots in there. Okay, I mean, granted, there's spots there that are open where there is literally no population. We understand that, but there are some spots there that we definitely need to fill in for sure. But this represents here, you know, almost 50. Yeah, this is these 74,729 measurements from these 28,000 global locations. So this is really, really amazing stuff. Amazing amount of data in the database for students and professional researchers alike to take and check out and use for the research purposes, or other citizen scientists who just want to know what's going on around them or what's going on the other, on the four corners of the planet. So, and we have data from all over the place. So, make sure you all check that out at some point. So since we're talking about, last 3 years of the campaign, we've been stressing a lot, why is tree height so important and why does NASA care and why should you? And I'm going to go over this because I haven't mentioned this in this campaign, these campaign webinars for a while. But tree height is the most widely used indicator of an ecosystem's ability to grow trees. And I like to showcase it this way, where we have two major, areas on the planet. Think of the, around the equator, you have the Amazon rainforest, the Amazonian rainforest. We have an area where there's lots of trees, lots of tall trees. Trees are flourishing greatly, when there's not, when they're not going through, deforestation and all that stuff, but, and blight and fires and all that. But we have areas where you can look at tree height and say, hey, those areas are great for trees to thrive. That ecosystem is healthy to grow trees. And in the rainforest, we have the right type of soil, the right organically rich soil like humus. We have the right amount of precipitation. We have the right amount of sunlight. We have the right temperatures. We have the right humidity to grow these trees and grow them high. Conversely, when you're talking about the desert climate, when you're looking at the Sahara Desert, the Gobi Desert, Death Valley in the United States, we're looking at areas there where we don't see many trees. So tree height is not really a huge thing because the soil's not right. We have this sandy soil, not organically rich. We have a really hot, dry, arid climate. We don't have a lot of precipitation. And if there is a lot of precipitation, if that falls down quickly, if we get precipitation quickly, we often see runoff and flooding in these desert areas because the grains of the sand are so tightly packed together and so densely packed that we cannot seem to, the water doesn't seem to infiltrate or percolate through the soil quick enough, so we get that runoff. Tree height allows you to track the growth of trees over time. You've probably tracked a tree from when you planted it as a sapling, or there's a tree in your location or in your yard, in your neighborhood that you've noticed is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Simply put, you can look at that tree height and say, that tree seems to be pretty healthy because it's growing pretty steadily every year. If you see a tree that basically stopped growing, maybe it's a species dependent thing. Maybe it's something that, the species only grows to a certain height, or maybe something is causing it not to grow at a rate that you think it should be growing. So tree height is super important for that aspect as well. Tree height observations also allow for researchers to understand biomass, basically the amount of mass, in a particular ecosystem, in a particular environment, which helps scientists calculate our planet's carbon budget. Trees pull in a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Trees also store a lot of carbon in their trunks, in their roots, in their branches, in their leaves, all of these things, okay? And basically looking at tree height, the taller a tree, the bigger a tree, the wider a tree, the more carbon it's going to be able to store from that carbon that is pulled out of the atmosphere through photosynthesis. And then in turn, through photosynthesis, a lot of that is converted into the oxygen that we breathe every day. Now, I do like to mention always, a lot of people think that trees are the only things responsible for the oxygen we breathe. Have you ever heard of phytoplankton? Phytoplankton are those microscopic organisms in the ocean, those microscopic plants like, algae and all these things. But the phytoplankton, basically makes up half of the oxygen we breathe, okay? They go through photosynthesis. Our oceans are carbon sink. A lot of the oceans, they pull in that, it pulls in that carbon dioxide. That phytoplankton pulls in that carbon dioxide converts a lot of that to the breathable oxygen that we breathe. So, you know, I always like to say, when you take a breath, you take your first breath, thank a tree. When you take your second breath, thank phytoplankton. All right. So I always like to showcase that. And as you know, we have lots of, you know, missions up there, you know, moving around the planet super fast, taking observations, and several of those can measure tree height observations and land cover from space. Tree height like ICET-2, like the JEDI instrument, the Global Ecosystems Dynamics Investigation on the International Space Station. Then we have ones that can look at land cover. We can look at Landsat imagery. We can look at Terra Modis imagery as well. So we can look at all of these things and, you know, paint this picture of, you know, how do we measure tree height from space, but then we also measure it from the ground, right? We measure it from the ground. That's where the GLOBE program comes in. So we have a combination of ground-based observations with the satellite space-based observations. And we also have some airborne campaigns. There's one out there called G-Light. If you can look that up, G-Light is an aircraft that's looking at things like this too, using an altimeter on board. So just a little bit about why tree height is so important and why does NASA care. And then we have this one, ICET-2. This is the one that's, you know, we've been focusing on a lot because it's able to measure, you know, the accuracy, the tree height accuracy at, you know, at unprecedented numbers. And it uses this laser altimeter. So we're calculating the time it takes the laser pulses to leave the satellite, bounce off the Earth's surface of things like trees and mountains and buildings and, you know, ice. You know, the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica, the sea ice in the Arctic, and the sea ice surrounding the Antarctic Peninsula. We're able to calculate or photon count how many of these photons come back to the satellite and how long they took in order to leave the satellite, hit the surface, and back again. And if we go over these areas repeatedly and we see a change in that time it takes the photons to do that, we can then estimate, you know, any of the changes that we've seen. We can see if the tree has grown or if the tree has, you know, gotten smaller or the tree has fallen over even. We can see if ice has melted, if ice has grown, things like that. But for our intent, all intents and purposes here, we are focusing on ICET-2 and tree and canopy height. So I always like to mention this too, is that when ICET-2 returns, you know, a height of the canopy, of the tree canopy, it's returning the average height of all the trees within a 14-meter diameter footprint. So when the laser pulse leaves the satellite, it's very small, kind of like if you're shooting it out of a pen or a laser pointer. But as it travels at 300 miles down to the Earth's surface, it spreads out. Okay, just think of it like a light, like a flashlight. If you hold a flashlight and you're standing next to a wall, the light circle that you see is relatively small. It's about the same size as the flashlight. Okay, but if you back up, if you keep backing up, that light, that circular light, the diameter of that light that you're projecting onto the wall is going to get larger and larger and larger. So what happens here with ICET-2 is that the laser photon spreads out, and when it hits the ground or whatever, it hits the tree, you know, hits the trees, it's spread out to about a 14-meter diameter footprint. So in this picture here that you're seeing, if there happens to be 3 trees within that 14-meter diameter footprint that the photon hits, the tree height that's going to be returned, the tree height measurement that's going to be returned from ICET-2 is going to be the average of all 3 of these trees. If there's 1 tree in that footprint, it's just going to it's going to give you the height of that single tree. If there happens to be 100 trees, the satellite may not be able to get the tops of all 100 trees, but let's say it got the tops of 65 trees. It's going to return the average height for all of those 65 trees combined. So that's the way ICET-2 does it. It can't, you know, it's not going to send back the height of every single tree every time because of, you know, basically optics and, you know, how it works. You know, it's going to have to spread out. So I just wanted to showcase that because, you know, you may not be able to see, you know, individual trees. We are able to see it, and you've seen it in one of the past webinars that I've been able to match a tree height up with a NASA GlobeObserver to ICET-2 of a Bradford pear tree in my local area. So how much do you know about trees? And I took this from one of Dorian's presentations, just this really cool graphic here, because I just wanted to, you know, end up my introduction section as a reminder, you know, take a look at the Globe Trees Family Guide. Globe Trees Family Guide is a place to learn with family and friends, colleagues, all about trees. And it's set up in basically learning ages. It's set up with, looking at globe trees for sprouts, which is the very young group. That's going to be the young students up until lower elementary, and then we go into seedlings where the journey gets a little tougher as far as content, but it's very very inviting. We have lots of cool stuff up here, and that the seedlings is upper elementary school through middle school, and then we have the saplings. The saplings is where the information gets a little more complex, a little more specific about how to compare the tree height observations with on the ground with satellite measurements, things like that. How you can go in and use online tools to look at tree heights and land cover, things like that. Sapling is meant for high school students and adults. So whatever your age group is or people in your family, you can then go and explore these through the Globe Trees Family Guide, and we have the link here on the bottom. Or you can just go on to Google and just say Globe Trees Family Guide, and you'll get that to pop up in the search engine. Now, last bit of reporting here, we have the 2021 Community Trees Challenge, and that ended on May 15th, so 10 days ago. And we had observations from citizen scientists. We had 2,441 tree height observations from 1,733 global locations. And what's cool is that this makes up just over 7% of the total tree height observations from just over 11% of the global locations since we released the NASA Global Observer Trees tool on March 26, 2019. And as you can see here, the last bullet, since the release of the trees tool, there have been 35,915 tree height observations from over 15,000 global locations. So we got a lot of good observations in that month period. And as you know, in the GLOW program, we like to call that intensive observation period. So that 1 month was an intensive observation period. And we had, almost 2,500 tree height observations, but we had them coming in from over 1,700 global locations. So I know a bunch of you who are on here participated in this Community Trees Challenge. So thank you, for doing that, and keep those trees observations coming. All right.